Imagine if we could control earthquakes. Researchers have detected strange radio signals coming from deep space. These mysterious radio waves might just be bursts of cosmic energy from a distant neutron star. Or it could be that scientists have discovered a highly advanced civilization 90 light years away from Earth. So, what kind of civilization would have the ability to send strong signals like this? Well, scientists classify civilizations on something called the Kardashev scale. It's a scale that measures a civilization's technological ability to harness energy. While it's a hypothetical scale that could eventually have 5 or more levels, most scientists only refer to the first few. But don't be underwhelmed. We're the only civilization we know of, and technically, we're still stuck on Type 0. At this stage, we've managed to harness some, but not all of our planet's potential energy. We consume about 18 trillion watts of power every year, and if we wanted to bump ourselves up to a Type 1 civilization, we'd need to consume over 500 times that every second. To do this, we'd need to harness, store, and utilize all of the energy available to us. That includes all raw materials and every bit of sunlight that reaches Earth. We'd also have to tame volcanoes, earthquakes, and other natural forces. At the rate at which we're developing now, it's possible that we could be a Type 1 civilization within the next 200 years. But whatever civilization scientists may have discovered in the far reaches of space could already be a Type 2 civilization, or higher. Once our civilization has all of the energy available on our home planet under control and we graduate to a Type 1 on the Kardashev scale, then we'd need to take the next step. Time to crank up our energy consumption to 10 billion times what it was before. To do this, we'd need to harness not just all the solar energy that reaches Earth, we'd need all of the energy our star generates, period. If there is a Type 2 civilization out there, they're probably using an incredible system to do this: a Dyson sphere. They'd build this megastructure around their star to collect all the energy it radiates out in every direction. They could even assemble other Dyson spheres around the first Dyson sphere to guarantee that little to no energy escapes. But there's nothing simple about this technology, and that's why only advanced civilizations could construct something like it. For one, a Dyson sphere must be larger than the star itself. And if these megastructures are bigger than stars, well, they should be easy to spot, right? Well, this could be tricky. Once a civilization is finished building the Dyson sphere, the megastructure blocks nearly all of the visible light from its star. A civilization this advanced could make its own solar system invisible. Lucky for us, visible light isn't the only way to detect a star. Even with a Dyson sphere blocking its light, a star would still radiate heat, and we could detect the star by the infrared light it gives off. But that wouldn't be the only way we might discover a civilization this advanced. Remember that strange radio signal? It originated about 90 light years away from Earth, coming from the star HD 164595. Was this powerful radio signal created by an alien race and intentionally pointed toward Earth? A civilization able to pull this off would need to be far more advanced than our own. This Type 2 civilization would be able to utilize the raw materials on every planet in its star system, and maybe even beyond. They may have built fusion reactors that orbit their planet, fueled with gas from other worlds with hydrogen-rich atmospheres. And they might be mining precious metals from rocky planets, just like Earth. They could terraform other planets into livable worlds for their populations, and they wouldn't live in fear of civilization-ending natural disasters like asteroid impacts, ice ages, or global warming because they'd have technical solutions for these too. This alien civilization would be at the stage on the Kardashev scale where they'd be able to master interstellar travel. But if that's true, there should be no reason for them not to pop by for a visit, right? Well, not so fast. With all the advanced technology they might have at their disposal, these aliens could be waiting for us to catch up. That way, when our civilizations meet, we would do so as equal partners. Who knows? They could be so advanced that they're no longer a fully biological race. They could be more like cyborgs with a mix of robotic and organic material. This would make them capable of incredible things that humans could only dream of. But they wouldn't stop there. An advanced world like this would want to go farther up the Kardashev scale, and as they became a Type 3 civilization, they'd rely on something other than the power of their own star system. They would harness the power of several stars in their galaxy. With this much power, a civilization would have no problem meeting its ever-growing energy needs. They'd just hook up another star when they needed more power. If we ever advanced to this level, we'd have 100 billion stars available to harness in the Milky Way galaxy alone. A civilization like this would no doubt be the rulers of their galaxy, and they'd have the power to move entire star systems, merging them to harvest the energy they need more efficiently. So if one of these civilizations existed, well, you could detect them by observing the sudden disappearance of many stars in a faraway galaxy. This could be a sign that Dyson spheres have been constructed around not just one, but several stars. A Type 3 civilization could already be out there. After all, scientists have announced that they've found 2 galaxies with a highly unusual amount of infrared light. This is something we usually observe in galaxies where new stars are being born, but some unusual and sudden spikes in infrared light could mean that we've found the first signs that civilizations many times more advanced than us exist. Maybe. Imagine having the ability to live forever, travel anywhere in the universe, and harness enough power to create wormholes. Well, if you're part of the ultra-exclusive Type 3 Civilization Club, these are just some of the everyday luxuries available. So, how could feeble Earthlings get to this level of power? But more importantly, should we even try? How would our lives transform as a Type 3 civilization? Would technology work for us or against us? And what would it take to get to a Type 4 civilization? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we were a Type 3 civilization. On the Kardashev scale, which measures a civilization's technological ability to harness energy, we're stuck at a Type 0. To graduate to Type 1, we'd have to take full advantage of all the Earth's energy and any energy that comes our way, such as sunlight. According to physicist Michio Kaku, we'll get there in a century or two. But to get to Type 2, where we're able to harness all the energy of our sun, Dr. Kaku estimates we're a few thousand years away, which is frankly pretty optimistic. To reach Type 3, where a civilization harnesses the power of its entire galaxy, Michio estimates that we're looking at anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million years. So, If we managed to fast forward 1 million years into the future, what would our lives look like? With the ability to harness nearly limitless energy from any planet or star within sight, we could live anywhere we wanted. Maybe we could build an even better Earth, or an entirely new solar system from scratch. Looking for a tropical beach planet? It's all yours. Or how about a mushroom planet? Sure, we can do that. Earth, Mars, and every planet in our solar system might just be husks at this point. We would have mined them of all their resources to build Dyson swarms. No, I'm not talking about a swarm of fancy vacuums, but millions of energy-collecting satellites that could swarm around a star and turn it into one big battery. But to truly become a Type 3 civilization, we'd need swarms of Dyson swarms, collecting an unfathomable amount of energy from all the stars in our entire galaxy. At this point, humans would have harnessed biotechnology to its fullest, and we would likely become a race of cyborgs so advanced we'd be indiscernible from robots. Our new favorite dance move might be called the human. Over the past decade, we've already developed electrode implants that allow amputees the ability to control artificial limbs with their brains. We have brain implants that allow us to hear and perceive color. And Elon Musk is working on melding AI with the human brain with his company Neuralink. Just imagine where this techno-evolution will take us in 1 million years. To survive warp speed travel, we may very well have to modify our flesh and bone bodies into something more resilient. This is all wishful thinking, though. As AI improves exponentially, robots will rapidly outsmart and outnumber humans. They might consider us to be too useless, whiny, and, well, obsolete. If we're lucky, they'll keep us around as pets or wildlife. Or we may have to start acting more like them, ridding ourselves of any emotion or moral conscience. At this point, AI would be self-replicating on an exponential scale and could strip a planet with little remorse for whatever creatures live there. I'm sorry guys, but you all know our slogan. We are the Borg, and resistance is futile. With almost limitless resources as a Type 3 civilization, we would have enough power to harness Planck energy, the energy of space-time. Physics at this level would be vastly different from what we know today. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, our ability to travel faster than light is impossible. But at the Planck scale, we could build a wormhole to get around. As a Type 3 civilization with an almost infinite energy supply, we wouldn't need resource management. At this point, we'd be godlike with enough biotech to make us immortal and nearly indestructible. If anything stood in our way, well, we could snap our fingers and call it a day. Over time, we would eventually exhaust our entire galaxy's resources. In this case, we'd need to advance to become a Type 4 or 5 civilization, to explore and harvest energy from the rest of the universe. Without a resource limit as a Type 4 civilization, we'd have no reason to value the universe around us beyond our own technological gains. In other words, we'd get pretty bored. Like getting 100% completion in your favorite video game on the most challenging setting. Imagine a world where humanity has not only gained the ability to travel and populate space, but has progressed even further than that. Humanity can now control and navigate multiple universes. Welcome to one of the most advanced civilizations ever thought of. A Type 5 civilization. what is a Type 5 civilization? What would it mean for humanity? And how would we get to this point? This is What If, and here's what would happen if humanity became a Type 5 civilization. Okay, so before we get to our epic Type 5 civilization, we first need to start at zero. This is unfortunately where Earth is right now. A Type 0 civilization is one that's reliant on things like fossil fuels and still struggling with issues like climate change. Yeah, we've sent people to the moon and rovers to Mars, but we're far from interstellar travel, and although we have lots of technological advancements, we're still vulnerable to things like natural disasters and pandemics. So, although Earth is highly advanced in many ways, we still have a long way to go before we reach a Type 1 or 2 or 5 civilization. How do we get there? Well, before we get to that, what are these civilizations anyway, and who came up with them? It's known as the Kardashev scale. Developed by Nikolai Kardashev in 1964, the scale categorizes a civilization according to its technological capabilities and energy consumption. Originally, the scale only involved Type 1, 2, and 3 civilizations, but it's since been expanded to include Type 4 and 5. Now, while civilizations 4 and 5 are mostly speculative and theoretical, civilizations 1 through 3 could happen someday. So, how could humans become a Type 5 civilization? Whoa, not so fast. First, we need to get to a Type 1. There's no way a civilization can jump from a 0 all the way to 5. So, let's get started. Type 1 civilization. A Type 1 civilization would be a massive improvement from where we are now on Earth. As a Type 1, we could harness all the energy available to us on the planet. Imagine being able to harness the power of the oceans and the sun. Things like hurricanes and earthquakes would become minor inconveniences, and all our energy would be renewable. Now, to get to this point, the main thing we'd need to focus on would be energy transition. Shifting from non-renewable to renewable energy sources would be the key priority. And it would need to be done at a global scale. Think entire deserts filled with solar panels, wind turbines covering the clouds, and ocean thermal energy conversion plants. Other scientific advancements would also be essential. Things like quantum computing and advanced AI would be key parts of helping us transition into this new civilization. But it's not just about the technology. We'd also need some sort of global governance to help unify the world to tackle these massive challenges. Experts think that this might happen in the next century or two. But we don't have time to wait that long, so let's fast forward and move on to the next type of civilization. We got 4 more to go. Type 2 civilization. This would be a massive leap on all fronts of energy and technological advancement. Being a Type 2 would mean that we'd be able to build extreme megastructures, like this Dyson sphere. This would allow us to harness the power of the sun. And with that, our energy capability would be virtually limitless. We could innovate our way to incredible technological heights. Instead of being tethered to Earth, we now have the power to travel to new planets and start populating them. Mars, Venus, and other planets in our solar system would become our new homes. And overall, the solar system would become a utopia. With humans having this much power, we'd move beyond things like scarcity, war, and inequality. A unified galactic government would span across our star system. But it would take some hard work. Becoming a Type 2 civilization would require all of humanity's effort and span multiple generations. Type 3 civilization. You think harnessing the power of our Earth and Sun is epic? How about an entire galaxy? Well, that's what you can expect when transitioning to a Type 3 civilization. Things like black holes, billions of stars, and other celestial bodies would all be at humanity's disposal to harness and use. This could allow for wormhole travel. We could instantly travel to distant points in the galaxy. And if that wasn't enough, we'd also have the ability to terraform different planets however we please. I kind of want to ski on Venus. Type 4 civilization. Okay, now is where things get really crazy. A Type 4 civilization is beginning to reach a point beyond our current understanding of the universe and physics. So, naturally, there would be some weird aspects to this upgraded version of humanity. Being able to terraform planets and control celestial bodies was so last civilization. Now, we reshape, destroy, or create entire worlds. We would have unlimited power, having mastered the resources of the entire universe. Things like artificial intelligence would become so advanced by this point that they'd become part of the structure of the universe. With that, we'd be able to control virtually every aspect of everything. We could manipulate time and create different timelines, create new life forms and different kinds of matter. And on top of all that, in a Type 4 civilization, we'd be able to transcend biological limitations and achieve a form of immortality. Pretty crazy, right? Well, we're not even done yet. Type 5 civilization. Similar to a Type 4 civilization, a Type 5 civilization would be dealing with problems and obstacles that we can't even comprehend. But what we do know is that this civilization would be able to do virtually anything. The people, or whatever they would evolve to at this point, would essentially become gods. They could instantly create new universes with specific conditions that they could use to experiment with new life. They could effectively create their own simulations, ones that are even more complex than the world we live in today. And the key difference would be that a Type 5 civilization would have access to and control of multiple universes. Yeah, instead of being limited to just one puny universe, we would now become a multiversal civilization. This means everything we could do in one universe, our control of energy and our access to resources, would now be multiplied across the entire multiverse. Now, what happens after that is almost incomprehensible. A Type 6 or 7 civilization may mean that humanity merges with the fabric of reality itself. We might go beyond our physical reality. And who knows what happens after that? But no doubt it'd be pretty crazy. Imagine a world where you're not even human. You can create universes with ease and control time. This could be a reality in an incredibly advanced, and I mean an incredibly advanced civilization. Okay, we've talked about what if humanity reaches Type 1 through Type 5 civilizations, but what if we take it a step further? What if we become a Type 6 or 7 civilization? What would life be like then? Is a Type 7 civilization even possible? What would humans look like? And why might something like this be a terribly bad idea? This is What If, and here's what would happen if humanity became a Type 7 civilization. Okay, before we start, let's quickly recap the types of civilizations we've covered so far. I'll make it quick. Type 1 civilization. Okay, here, humanity gains control of Earth and we're able to access all the power on the planet. Type 2 civilization? Well, this is where we harness the power of the sun and start to populate other planets like Mars and Venus. Type 3 civilization. Now, humanity is controlling the entire galaxy. commanding the power of black holes, multiple stars, and all other celestial bodies. These civilizations were conceived by Nikolai Kardashev, who created the Kardashev scale. It's a hypothetical framework used to measure a civilization's ability to harness technological power. Civilizations 1 to 3 were developed by Kardashev himself, but the list has since expanded in a more speculative manner to add types 4 through 7. Here are some of them in Fast Forward. Type 4 civilization? Well, humanity gains the ability to populate and control the entire universe. Type 5 civilization. Now, humanity is controlling multiple universes. We've become a multiversal civilization. So that's 1 through 5, but what happens next is pretty ridiculous. And we should preface that this goes beyond the expanded Kardashev scale, making these next civilizations purely speculative. They're also getting so advanced that scientists claim these civilizations are hard to even comprehend. We'll be dealing with problems we don't even know about yet. But hey, you guys asked for this, so let's strap in. Things are about to get weird. Type 6 civilization. A Type 6 civilization will see some significant upgrades from our Type 5 civilization. Instead of controlling parts of multiple universes, well, we can now control everything. Yeah, we can instantly create or destroy any universe of our choosing. Not only that, but time would become a new toy for us to play with. We can now manipulate it any way we want. Feel free to create multiple timelines. Maybe I'll create one where I'm the president, or I have blonde hair, or maybe one where I'm super jacked. And with all these multiverses, humanity wouldn't be the only civilization. By now, there's a good chance that we've discovered or even created multiple civilizations of other new species across different universes. Ones that range from Type 0 to Type 5. And of course, with us at the top of the food chain, humanity would be the rulers of these civilizations. Or we might view them as cultures that are lesser than us. Maybe we'll just observe them in the same way we do with ant colonies or zoo animals. And what would you look like in a Type 6 civilization? Well, definitely not like you do now. Or I guess you could if you wanted to. Let me show you some examples. You'd have the power to control reality and matter, so if you wanted, you could look like you do now, or you could look like The Rock. There's also a chance that we would no longer be biological beings. As we've progressed through these civilizations, technology and AI have only been getting more advanced. We may have fused with artificial intelligence, becoming robo-human hybrids. Maybe we'd look like this. And if you're more creative, who knows what you could be? You could be an alien, a godlike giant, or go a more efficient route and become a ball of energy, one that could move around universes with ease. Now, if you think a Type 6 civilization sounds nuts, well, wait till you see what's next. Type 7 civilization. As we've progressed through these civilizations, things are only getting more ridiculous, weird, and confusing. We're now officially at the point where this civilization is almost beyond human comprehension. We'd have the ability to create, alter, and destroy more universes. Ultimately, controlling everything. One of the key differences between a Type 6 and 7 civilization would be us being able to control the Omniverse. Okay, again, this is entirely speculative, but the Omniverse is even bigger than the multiverse. It contains an infinite amount of universes, both real and fictional. It shows every conceivable timeline and contains realities we can't even understand yet. Humans, or whatever we're called at this point, would be able to transcend any form of physical or metaphysical reality. Our new forms are unimaginable. at least with our current knowledge. We'd be past the point of having to worry about dying or any form of suffering. Instead, humans might exist in a state of constant bliss, enlightenment, and euphoria. We might be able to exist simultaneously in multiple realities and timelines, able to see everything in the past, present, and future. With all this incredible power, it kind of begs the question, would humanity even want to get to this point? Would we even be considered human? I mean, society has progressed so far that we're not even experiencing the things that make us who we are. Instead of hanging out with our loved ones and following our passions, we're now invincible beings who have transcended our current feeble human needs and ideas. We're building new realities and playing God. We'd also have plenty of existential challenges in this period. With humanity being so powerful and controlling everything, well, what would there be for us to do? We've already conquered the Earth, the universe, and now the Omniverse. Where does humanity progress? And what would we have left to accomplish? We wouldn't experience any adversity or challenges, two essential aspects of our human life. So, as exciting as these things sound, would it be worth it?
At what point will we attain type 2 status? Well, remember, now we're talking about centuries to maybe 1,000 years into the future. This means building the first starships. So we're going to go far beyond the solar system and reach out to the nearby stars.
So Pete, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
You seem surprised that I'm asking you how you're doing.
It's just an odd way to start. Not you say it every week, but it seemed like you were putting me on the spot for some reason.
Well, I mean, in this case, I was actually concerned. I am concerned with how you're doing, but more in the context of energy. How are you feeling energetically?
Well, I mean, here we're sitting in August of 2020 and just is this the tail end of the pandemic? Really? I don't know. I think like a lot of people who are working from home, not everybody's working from home, but I am. A lot of people are taxed. They've expended a lot of their energy.
They're low. And I mean, I think most people would answer the question the same way. Most people feel they don't have enough energy. They could use more energy because at the end, we're all energy, including our planet.
Okay, now I see where you're going with this. You're talking about, and because of probably the topic of today's show, everything is energy.
Everything is energy, and in this case, how planets are sort of categorized according to the Kardashev scale, which is something we'll get into later. There are type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations, and it's according to how much energy they can harness from, in this case, type 2, that you can harness from the sun.
We have done a few Kardashev scale-like videos on What If, and I don't recall, are we a type 1?
Well, bad news. We're not a type 1 yet. We're actually type 0, which is not something that
depressing.
Yeah, it feels depressing, but we have nowhere to go but up.
Okay.
Which is another way to look at it. It's kind of like type 2 would be more like solar power on steroids.
Okay, solar power on steroids. So it's like the sun, but we're getting all of our power from the sun. We're able to harness all that power from the sun and store it too.
Yes,
right?
and store it, which as you can imagine would allow us to do a whole bunch of things, not things that I would necessarily understand, nor did I really understand this prior to probably hours ago. But that's why we have guests on the show, because we want people to be able to come on and explain some of these complicated topics, like what if Earth became a type 2 civilization. And in this case, we're lucky enough to have somebody who's a bit of an expert on the subject and who we've also had on the show before.
Yeah, we have. It's Professor Michio Kaku, who's extremely smart and well-respected and followed by a lot of people.
And really one of the people who are most cited and quoted when you're talking about today's what if the Earth became a type 2 civilization.
Michio Kaku is known as a futurist, a great communicator, and a popularizer of science. He first graduated summa cum laude from Harvard University in 1968 and received his PhD from Berkeley in 1972. Kaku has expertise in several fields, such as hadronic physics, supersymmetry, supergravity, superstring theory, and not superquantum physics, just quantum physics. He's also quite the media maven with multiple best-selling books to his name, including his most recent, The Future of Humanity. He also hosts 2 radio shows and appears regularly in television series exploring space, physics, and the future. He's currently the City College of New York's Henry Seamat Professor of Theoretical Physics, where he's been teaching for 35 years.
Professor Kaku, welcome back to What If Discussed.
Glad to be on the show.
And we're always glad to have you. And
for sure.
As Peter and I talked about off the top, it's a complicated subject, this type 1, type 2 civilizations, if you don't know the Kardashev scale.
Yeah.
And of course, I think we did our best to try to understand it and explain it, but this is why you're here, because obviously this is something that you're considered one of the experts on this planet. So first of all, please clarify, what is the Kardashev scale and what is a type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization?
Well, we physicists are tired of talking about flying saucers and little green men and speculating about life in space. I'm a physicist. We use energy to rank civilizations in outer space. A type 1 civilization is planetary. They consume all the energy that they receive from the sun. For example, they control the weather. A type 2 is stellar. They control all the energy output of the mother sun, sort of like the Federation of Planets in Star Trek. They've colonized a few of the neighboring planets, neighboring star systems, but not much more. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They can harness the energy of 100 billion stars in the galaxy, sort of like Star Wars. Star Wars would be an example of a type 3 galactic civilization. Now, what are we? Do we play with the weather, play with volcanoes, and play with earthquakes? Do we play with the sun? Do we play with black holes throughout the galaxy? No. We are type 0. We don't even rate on this scale. We get our energy from dead plants, oil and coal. But we are about 100 years away from attaining type 1 status. For example, the internet. What is the internet? It is the first type 1 telephone system to be unleashed in this century. What language will this type 1 civilization speak? Well, already English and Mandarin Chinese are the 2 greatest languages on the internet. And what is the European Union? What is NAFTA? What are all these trade blocs? The beginning of a primitive type 1 planetary economy. Now, if you keep this scale up, at what point will we attain type 2 status? That is, leave this solar system and start to explore the nearby stars. Well, you just take out a slide rule or a calculator. You can calculate that in just a few thousand years, we will be type 2 like Captain Kirk. Now, Captain Kirk lives in the 23rd century, so that's about right. A little early, but still well on the scale that Nikolai Kardashev formulated in the 1960s. Then you hit type 3 in about 100,000 years.
Wow.
And why is that? Because that's the energy that you attain, the Planck energy. The Planck energy is the energy of space-time. It's when space becomes unstable, wormholes develop, black holes, gateway, hyperspatial gateways through space and time. That's the Planck energy. The Planck energy is a quadrillion times more powerful than the Large Hadron Collider outside Geneva, Switzerland. And why do I mention that? Because once you attain the Planck energy, wormholes, maybe even time travel, is a possibility.
Wow.
Let's bring it back down to Earth and talk talk about type 2. I was asking off the top whether a type 2 civilization was simply like solar power on steroids.
Yes.
Now, I know you're not going to quote me in your next book as a genius insight, but how close is that idea to what type 2 means?
Well, type 2 does not mean simply getting sunlight from the sun. It means playing with the sun itself. For example, a Dyson sphere would envelop the entire sun with a sphere to absorb 100% of the energy output of a star. That's a Dyson sphere, and astronomers think that, well, we're not sure, but we may have the signals from some potential candidates of being a type 2 civilization in outer space. There's a star called Tabby star, which drops in intensity by about 25%. Some people think that maybe a gigantic Jupiter-sized planet moves in front of the star, absorbing all its energy, and perhaps that is a Dyson sphere in outer space.
Oh.
And a type 2 civilization would be like Star Trek. The Federation of Planets, they've colonized a small quadrant of the galaxy, would be a type 2 civilization.
Energy is something that I don't mean we don't talk about energy, because we talk about energy, but as important as energy is to our day-to-day lives and our functions on this planet, survival, but even beyond, you'd think we'd have even more focus. I think we take it for granted. Obviously, you just walk into a room, turn on a light switch, etc. But as you said earlier, we still are at a pretty primitive level of harnessing energy, which is, again, fossil fuels. How important is it that we, let's say, fast forward our harnessing of solar power to not only get to type 2 civilization one day, but to expedite the evolution of this species?
Well, let's take a look at it historically. Throughout most of human history, for 99% of human history, we had about a quarter of a horsepower per person. The strength of your left hand and right hand. And that's it, folks. That was the energy output for most of human civilization, about a quarter of a horsepower. Then when we domesticated horses about 10,000 years ago, we went from a quarter of a horsepower to 1 horsepower. And that began what is called civilization. Cities, armies, empires began to be formed. And then just 300 years ago, we discovered the steam engine. And as a consequence, we went from 1 horsepower to maybe 10 horsepower in a buggy, in a locomotive. Now, of course, you have access to thousands of horsepower. And in fact, we're going to use that energy to rocket into outer space. So you see that the progress of civilization can be mapped by the progress in energy harnessing, that we've been able to harness thousands of horsepowers for 1 astronaut, while before it was only the strength of your left hand and your right hand. Now, you mentioned energy sources of the future. Solar is one, but there's another one I think that is even more important, and that's fusion power. Now, fusion power is still a few decades away, but fusion power is the power of the universe.
Wow.
It's what makes the sun shine. It's what makes the stars twinkle. And we're going to be able to, I think, in a few decades, harness that fusion power on the planet Earth to give us unlimited amounts of energy from seawater. Seawater is the basic fuel for fusion plants. And we have one in France. It's called the ITER fusion reactor in Kardashev, France, built by the European Union with the help from the United States and Russia and Japan. And we hope to get fusion off the ground in the coming decades.
Well, just so we book you in it far enough in advance, I'd just like you to put in your calendar that when that happens, we'd like to have you back on the show. Because ideally, you and I would still be alive, Peter. We'd still be doing What If Discussed. But like right now, I would say let's just put a pin in that for now. Let's say we jump in the time machine and go right there, the What If time machine. Peter, start it up. Yes, we haven't used it in a while. So let's say all the theoreticals are behind us. We are now at that point where we are a type 2 civilization. What are some of the kind of cool things that people would be sort of fascinated by that a type 2 civilization as Earth would be able to do, whether it's controlling the weather, the atmosphere, blowing asteroids out of the sky. Like, what are some of the things that we should be able to expect as a type 2 civilization?
Well, remember, now we're talking about centuries to maybe 1,000 years into the future. Well, we'll have pretty much colonized the entire solar system out to Pluto and maybe out to the nearby stars. We're going to build the first starship, perhaps within 100, 200 years. NASA already has the 100-year Starship program looking at potential propulsion systems for a starship. For example, antimatter engines, fusion engines, even ramjet fusion engines. These are all possible engines for starships. Now, we're not talking warp drive. To get warp drive, you'd have to be type 3. But by the time you're type 1 and aspiring toward type 2, this means building the first starships. So we're going to go far beyond the solar system and reach out to the nearby stars. There's even a program called the Breakthrough Starshot Program. Stephen Hawking, my late colleague, was a member of that program. And he believed that, yes, we should build the first starship. Not in a few hundred years, but in this century, just in this century, build the first starship.
Well, one of the great things about having you is that regardless of where we're at, individually or collectively, I'm always optimistic and excited after I speak to Michio Kaku, because you see the future in such a way that is, especially in these times, encouraging and exciting and wow. Gives us a reason to sort of, look forward beyond our sort of day-to-day problems and be excited about the future.
It's interesting because we talked about, Homo sapiens being around for 200,000 years.
Yes.
And Professor Kaku saying, all you had for power was, half a horsepower.
Yes.
And now we're 100 years away, probably.
Yes. And I mean, 100 years away, we couldn't fly. Or sorry, 100, a little over 100 years ago, we couldn't fly. So, and then, 50 years later, 60 years later, we're sending people to the moon. So
incredible.
As you are always adept at doing, you get us sort of steered in the right direction. We're going to have Professor Kaku on later. If you want to listen to this full in-depth interview beyond our conversation that we just had, click on the link below, because a special treat, we are going to be breaking down your most recent New York Times bestseller, The Future of Humanity. I don't think it's overstating it to say that this is one of those times where you want to be thinking about the future of humanity, but especially the insights and the visionary perspectives that you have in the book. Give us a little idea of what we're going to be hearing about and what people can expect to find in the book, The Future of Humanity.
Well, the dinosaurs did not have a space program.
They did not.
That's why they're not here today. There are no dinosaurs joining us for this interview today because they got wiped out. They were clueless. They didn't know what hit them. Well, we do have a space program, and it's inevitable that we're going to have crises. For example, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, pandemics. We know they're going to be crises of the future, and we need an insurance policy. An insurance policy to make sure that humanity survives no matter what catastrophes hit the planet Earth. And the main stumbling block preventing that was a 4-letter dirty word, cost. It cost $10,000 to put a pound of anything into orbit around the planet Earth. That's your weight in gold. Think of your body made out of solid gold. That's what it costs just to put you in orbit around the planet Earth. Well, now prices are dropping because Elon Musk and others are perfecting the reusable rocket, because of competition, because of private-public collaboration. The price of space travel is dropping like a rock. This means that in the future, mom and dad may be able to go to outer space. And I would even predict that our grandkids may have the option of honeymooning on the moon.
Cool.
Not the dark side of the moon, though, because that's not a good way to start a relationship.
A little more private.
So again, more with Dr. Kaku about everything future of humanity. You don't want to miss this. So click on the link below, and you're going to get a really in-depth dive into a rabbit hole that's going to cover so many topics about the short, medium and long-term future of humanity on this planet. So yes, I guess we have a lot to look forward to. Would be the glass half full, because we're type 0, as Professor Kaku talked about. We're hundreds of years away from probably being a type 1 and thousands of years away from being a type 2.
This is, and like I mentioned, this is heartening for me as opposed to disheartening for me, in that, like I say, the Homo sapiens have been here for 200,000 years, and all the progress we've made is basically to get to here. And he thinks in 100 years, 200 years, we could be a type 1 civilization. My gosh, like how incredible is that progression in 100 years compared to the last 200,000 years?
I'd love to see that on the news more. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy, as he talked about, that we get so focused on the present. And, if you're a Zen Buddhist, you'd say, well, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. But we also get fixated on this particular time as though this is, this is the future of the species, is basically the next 10. No, it's hundreds of years, thousands of years, regardless of even what happens in the short term. We in the planet are going to be around a long time in some form. And it seems crazy, obviously, as we sit here today, that the energy that we use and harness is still, as he said, like, plants and fossil fuels. When you have
decaying dinosaurs.
And the focus on the sun isn't new, but hearing this, you think, man, if we really focused all our attention on solar power and then, further harnessing that power.
So we've got this enormous yellow burning ball of
energy,
fuel that I can feel on my face when I
Yes.
walk down the street. It's burning all day long.
Yes.
I mean, certainly our Earth rotates, but why are we not expending all our energy
Yes.
into capturing the energy from something that's free, something that's incredibly powerful, and something that's so close, rather than bugging around with all this junk underneath the dirt?
We're the only species in the world that actually has the ability to delay its own evolution. Because we've known this for 50, 60 years, that obviously there's a way to get solar power, make it ubiquitous around the world and essentially make energy as close to free as possible. But our focus hasn't been there. Our focus has been in other ways. And of course, once you have that link to your economy, nobody's in a rush to sort of change the status quo. And that's kind of been the case. I think, though, not only is the will there by most people or many people around the world, I think it's starting to see that the political currency is there as well. So I think if we're doing the show in 10 years, it's a different story, because I think we're going to be way further down the line on way more solar and way less fossil.
Well, in 10 years,
yes,
we're 10 years closer to that, 30 years in which we're all going to die if we don't stop burning fossil fuels and treating the planet like
we don't have a great history as being proactive, but we have a pretty good history as being reactive.
Are we the only species that could end our own evolution as well?
I would think so. Outside of lemmings, I think lemmings can just run off cliffs.
But as a whole, I mean, all over the world, they can't coordinate their
No,
their
I mean,
jump.
it's funny, because we're supposed to be the smartest species in the world, yet we have that unique ability, which is, you could argue, not smart.
Exactly. If you want more with Professor Michio Kaku, like we said, there's the full audio podcast. Click on the link below and you'll get about 20 more minutes with us and Professor Michio Kaku. It's going to be really interesting. Trust me.
Talking about the future of humanity, which we're kind of doing here, but of course, at a kindergarten level. So if you want to hear somebody who really has an incredibly visionary perspective on, and exciting and optimistic perspective on the future of the species, humanity, the planet, etc., you're going to want to stick around for this, because again, every time we talk to Michio Kaku, we usually leave, kind of smiling and feeling a lot better about things.
He's talking about things that make you happy, rather than, it's not the end of the world for him. It's the possibilities of what we can do.
Well said, Peter.
What are the possibilities of you coming back and watching another What If Discussed, maybe next week? Well, why don't you? Because this one's over. Thanks for joining us here on What If Discussed. Imagine if we could control earthquakes and tsunamis to generate power. or maybe even terraform every planet in the solar system. These are just a couple of the things that might happen if human civilization was to advance in the future. So, how can humans get to this point? What other advancements will happen? And what makes us think we'll even progress this far? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we became a Type 1 civilization. Global civilizations can be categorized into what's known as the Kardashev scale. This measures a civilization's ability to use all the energy available to it and is scaled from 1 to 3. Currently, humanity doesn't even reach Type 1 civilization. This is because humans don't use all the forms of energy on Earth. We use wood, coal, and oil, but there's a lot more. So, what would change if humanity evolved into one of these types of civilizations? Being a Type 1 civilization means we would have complete control over all the energy on Earth. This means that we'd say goodbye to fossil fuels since they're limited and unsustainable. Instead, we could use the wind, sunlight, and water for our energy needs. And since this energy is so accessible, you may no longer need to pay for your power bill. In a Type 1 civilization, we'd continuously be using energy. It would be as essential as oxygen. We would also start using natural disasters to our advantage. Tsunamis could be used to produce energy. And earthquakes could potentially be used to terraform parts of the world. With us having complete control over our planet's energy sources, we could also control the weather. If an area of the world were suffering through a drought, we could disperse rain clouds over it and bring it back to life. Humanity could also say goodbye to global warming, as we'd be able to bring the atmosphere back to carbon neutral and control our planet's temperatures. Casualties from natural disasters would also be reduced, as we'd be able to predict when and where they might happen. And not only that, but we'd be able to live on places on Earth we'd never have dreamed of before, like in the water, as well as in climates that used to be unsuitable for us humans. Yep, living in a Type 1 civilization would be pretty great. But with things being this perfect, we might get a little bored. So what if we took humanity one step further and became a Type 2 civilization, or even a Type 3? A Type 2 civilization means we could harness the energy of the sun and use it not just on Earth, but throughout our solar system. We could use its power to travel to and terraform Mars, or even a planet like Neptune. Becoming a Type 3 civilization would allow us to use all the energy in the galaxy